Okay, and I'll just do apologies first. We have apologies from Gordon McDougall, Alistair Robertson, and Carl Leidecker, who is substituted by Heather Crabb. And I'll just do a roll call now, so if you could please just answer when your name is called. Councillor Lane.
Present.
Councillor Wheeler.
Present.
Councillor Alex Nicholl.
Present.
Councillor Gregg. Angela Scott.
Present.
Ken Mulroy.
Present.
George MacDonald.
Present.
Caroline Hiscox.
Present.
Susan Webb.
Present.
Luann Goujon.
Yes, I am here.
Bruce Fackerson.
Present.
Paul O'Connor.
Present.
Jonathan Smith.
Present.
And Richard McCallum.
Present.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I'll maybe just extend a warm welcome to a couple of new faces to the board today, which is Luann Goujon and I think Caroline Hiscott is here for the first time as well. So welcome to you both, and you know, we look forward to your participation in this meeting and others as we move forward. Do we have any declarations of interest? I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I'll take that as a no. Okay, the first item of business that we have is item 1.1, which is the minute of the previous meeting, which took place on the 22nd of February. I think there were a few matters arising from the minute, some additional information that was requested during that meeting, which I believe has now been circulated. I think that was, we had the executive summary of the population needs assessment has now been completed and sent out. I think we also had a summary of the Feely report, which we talked about at the last meeting, and indeed, I think we also had a response, an answer to a question that was raised in relation of SERP at the last meeting. So hopefully those that information has been circulated to board members. I think some of it may just have been earlier today, so hopefully that has gone out to everybody. Are there any other matters arising from the minute of the meeting on the 22nd of February? Are we happy to approve? Yeah, I'll take that as a silence as a approval. Okay, that now takes us on to item 1.2, which is the minute of the meeting of the Community Planning Management Group, which took place on the 24th of March, which is here for information only. Any issues with that, or are we happy to move on and note that? Yeah, okay. And that then takes us on to item 1.4, which is the national update that we get from our Scottish Government representative, which is Richard McCallum. So I'm hoping Richard is still with us. There he goes. Richard, I think our normal practice is that if board members have any questions, we circulate those to you, or we send them to you ahead of time. I think the correspondence I've had from our committee clerk was that we didn't have any questions for you this time round. So hopefully that was the case. I don't know whether you've got any verbal update that you want to provide board members with today. I realise that we're obviously in an election period, so that sometimes makes a difference to information that might be coming out from Scottish Government. But any updates for the board?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, as you say, we're obviously in the pre-election period, and clearly anything that I say will be for a new administration to consider when we deal with that after the 6th of May. But I thought there were 2 or 3 things that it might be helpful just to update the board on this afternoon. All of which relate to matters that happened just before that pre-election period started. at the end of March. The first thing to just say was in relation to the Social Renewal Advisory Board. The Scottish Government responded to this just before the pandemic in terms of the report that was published, if not now, when, and broadly speaking, the Scottish Government accepted the board's recommendations, and there are a number of things in areas like housing, fair work, and supporting parents and young people into employment that were considered as clear recommendations where further work needed to be taken forward. There wasn't obviously sufficient time in the last parliamentary term to move those things forward, and so it will be for a new government to consider how they take those matters forward. However, there was actions in relation to a full review of the Scottish Welfare Fund and investigating the possibility of a minimum income guarantee that ministers did sign up to being priorities that should be moved forward by a future administration. Just a couple of other things. The local governance review, there was a statement that the Cabinet Secretary for Communities and Local Government and the COSLA President published on the 18th of March. I think a reflection that the Democracy Matters conversations that had been moving forward had been somewhat delayed by the pandemic, but there was a number of things coming out of the material, the Democracy Matters material, about how people want more control over many of the decisions that are made that affect their local communities, and actually some thoughts and further actions that need to be considered about alternative governance arrangements. Again, that's something that officials are certainly considering and thinking about over this pre-election period, and something for a new administration to consider. And the final thing just to say was obviously in March as well, MSPs voted on the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Children to become law, meaning that public authorities will have to comply with children's rights. So there is funding over the next 3 years to help public authorities in terms of the implementation of this legislation, and that funding will include money for guidance and training as public authorities think this through. But clearly there's big implications for many bodies in considering the implementation of this legislation, which the bill will commence 6 months from royal assent being received. So I know there's a challenge in the Supreme Court on this particular matter at the moment, but to note obviously that legislation was passed in March. So that was all from me. But as always, if there's any questions outside of the meeting that people want to pick up with me, then I'm very happy to do that.
Thank you very much, Richard. That's a helpful roundup, and we appreciate you also, saying that you'll take questions out with the meeting as well. I'll maybe just open up and see if there are any questions on what you've told us there, or whether there's any other issues that people might want to raise. Yes, Jonathan, I'll bring you in. Your hands up first.
Thank you. I'll see if I can, for the purpose of the recording, see if my camera will work here as well. There we go. Yeah, so mentioning on the terms of the United Nations Convention, I think a real positive note that, of course, the Community Planning Partnership here in Aberdeen quite early on set the ambition of being a rights-respecting, child-friendly city. I think from as a personal view, and I'll share it as that with some community feedback, and I say that because it's not a topic on which we have yet broadly consulted, but where we have had conversations so far, positive aim, a real buy-in about what it seeks to achieve. Thinking back to, again, a lot of about 2 years ago, just before the impact of COVID, some of the advice we had from United Nations at the time, I think there was also an exchange at the council with some PhD students on this topic. They found that where similar attempts had been made, there was sometimes a bit of a disconnect between the local and the national, and trying to generate local buy-in to quite global themes. This idea of it's so insurmountable, where can I make a difference? I think we've developed that locally in terms of how we're going to approach this as a city. I know there's been work going on about a specific team, members of staff assigned to this, ready to go, essentially, as we move towards post-COVID, hopefully soon. But I wondered if there'd been anything before the close of Scottish Parliament about any national support that where local authorities, other community planning partners are keen to make this difference. So not only from a requirement or a legislative enforcement, but where already a willingness, a commitment already, how the benefit of that could be better supported, where we might see, again, some national link to try and anticipate the learning we have from Italy, from West Africa, from Uganda, about there was a disconnect between the local buy-in, individuals, informal groups, how they could get involved, about what the national themes were. Had there been any discussion of that so far, or is that perhaps to come next in the shape of the next Scottish Government, about how we can support partners at a local level to do well on this?
Okay, thanks for that, Jonathan. You were coming a bit in and out the recording there, but hopefully Richard got the flavour of the question there. So maybe just hand over to Richard and see if you.
Yeah, just very briefly. So I think there's been initial considerations of this, and work has been done, Jonathan, on that. I think what I'll do is I'll feed back to the lead director on this and see what opportunities there might be, obviously further from here on in, to make those connections, because I think hearing some of those experiences that you mentioned, I'm sure that's already been the case, and there is already that work ongoing. But to make sure there's that tie, and I think would really be helpful, and I'll certainly take that message back.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And I suppose, as Jonathan's pointed out, Richard, we have a desire as the Community Planning Partnership, in that child-friendly city and the rights-respecting agenda that we've got around that. We've done training already, but we would probably be interested in the aspects of funding that may be available to facilitate work around that moving forward as well, that you mentioned at the beginning. So any further information we can get would be useful, I think. Any other questions or comments on Richard's update? Not seeing any other hands, Richard, so I think we'll leave it at that point. But as always, you're welcome to stay with us and the rest of proceedings today, so hopefully you can do that. Okay, right, that then takes us on to 2.1, which is our community engagement on priorities for improving local outcomes, summary results. It's quite a mouthful there. I'm glad Michelle has popped onto my screen there. Michelle, did you want to maybe just give us a little flavour of the results that have come back, and then I think I'll open it up for questions, which I think yourself, and ably assisted by Martin Wiley, I think, who's with us today, hopefully you'll be able to answer any questions that people might have. But I'll hand over to you first if you want to just give us a little bit of a summary of the what we've got before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ling. As you know, the simulator was launched and ran throughout March. So we took a paper to the board prior to that, just to explain that we were hoping through this tool to reach a broader kind of population of Aberdeen and to hear from them. So as you've quite rightly said, we've got Martin in the call as well, and I have to give credit for Martin for kind of introducing the partnership to this tool and the opportunity, and Martin has really ran the whole exercise, and also the report that you have in front of you today is the work of Martin and Anne McAteer within the team. So just briefly, you'll have seen from the report already that we've had a fantastic response to the simulator with 2,642 respondents, which is really good. In terms of when you look at other areas of Scotland, other councils that have used the simulator, you know, they've got a response rate of around 500 to 600, and indeed the vendor suggested that if we managed to hit 1,000, we'd be doing well. So I think 2,642 is fantastic, and that really is thanks to all partners for supporting the campaign and getting that out there and encouraging communities to respond. So thank you very much for that. As you know, the simulator was essentially a very simplified version of the priorities we have in the local outcome improvement plan. So we're really seeking the views of the general public about these priorities and where, to what level of importance they had for them personally. So it's been a great opportunity to hear from a range of people that we wouldn't normally hear from. Up until now, we've really relied on our City Voice questionnaire or our community groups, our priority neighbourhood partnerships, and most recently our locality empowerment groups. So this is just an added level onto that, so we can consider in the round what people think about what we are prioritising our resources on as a partnership. You'll see on page 35 that there is a chart, so that'll give you a general sense of the importance of issues to the public. I think what we also get from this tool is a breakdown of those high-level views you're seeing in that chart, but also by locality and indeed neighbourhood. So that's going to be really critical to help us support the targeting of particular groups in the city when we're taking forward improvement project ideas and testing those. Probably even more important than getting that feedback is that the simulator has enabled us to get feedback on areas that there might be potential gaps. So as well as hearing from them what they think of the priorities we've identified, we've also been able to, from 761 comments, be able to pick out some key themes of where members of the public feel that we should focus on and perhaps aren't at the moment. What we're doing at the moment as a partnership, we've been considering those detailed results through our outcome improvement groups and also through our locality planning leads across the partnership. We've also, and you'll see in the report, got a link to an interactive simulator results dashboard. So there's a wealth of information in there, and that'll allow colleagues to really explore and drill down into what some of those results are for different neighbourhoods. So as I say, they're really currently informing what we put forward as our priorities for the refresh of the LOIP and thinking about the story we're telling around that for members of the community. I think when you see the kind of hierarchy of improvement projects that are coming from communities, it is clear that some of the areas that they're prioritising, because the outcomes are so interlinked, so areas about behaviours and attitudes perhaps to health that are seen as less important, they have such an intrinsic link to some of the outcomes we're trying to improve around mental health. So it's about being able to tell that story back to communities so that they understand how these outcomes link and how the work that we are doing is trying to prevent an early intervention. So really, in terms of the next step from today, subject to the approval of the board, we would hope to be able to communicate these results back to members of the public so they can see the outcome of the exercise. Obviously, the next step will to see the LOIP and the locality plans, but critically, to maintain that engagement that the simulator has allowed us to have, we want to be able to go to that audience and invite them into our improvement projects and our groups that we've established to make sure we've got that ongoing connection.
Thanks very much for that, Michelle. I think that will be helpful for the board members just to hear that additional information on top of the report. As you say there, I mean, I think it was really pleasing to see the numbers of people that engaged in this. You know, I know from having been part of a number of consultation exercises in the role that I have currently and previously, that it's often quite difficult to get the level of engagement that we've managed through this. And, you know, in other discussions that we've had about that community engagement and making sure that we're trying to widen the reach and moving away from maybe the more traditional methods and communications that we've been using, I think it'll stand us in good stead with that refresh moving on. I think you're right. It was interesting to see the breakdown, particularly in different neighbourhoods, of what priorities were there, and maybe that will come as a surprise to some people, and maybe the order of preference that people put them in. But I'll maybe open up and see if there's any other questions, because I know in previous discussions that we've had that there might be some comments maybe around the prioritisations that people have given. And I think it was pertinent the point that you made about how they are interlinked. And so, you know, some that maybe have been given a higher priority, people have maybe not seen the obvious connection with some of the ones that are down lower. So I suppose it's about how we make sure that we're getting that, you know, out into the and communicated to the communities and people that have completed the survey on this time. So I'll just agree with you to extend my thanks to both Anne and Martin, who you know, have obviously worked hard to bring this forward in a tight timescale, I have to say. And given the length of time that you know, the members of the public had to engage with it as well, I think it's you know, it shows how enthusiastic people must have been to take part in this, and to partners for making sure it was widely promoted. It's been a good thing. Any questions or comments on what you've heard, or what's obviously within the papers? Yes, I'll bring in Jonathan and then see if anybody else wants to
Thank
enter
you.
into discussions. Thanks.
It was just to bring in, hopefully the connection's a bit better now. Is that okay for you all? Able to hear?
Yeah, you sound much better
perfect.
now,
Okay,
Jonathan.
thank you. That again, the feedback we had certainly through the civic forum and the various networks we have, community councils, EMF, etc., a real excitement, I think, about opportunities like this becoming mainstream to complement in-person activities, days like participatory budgeting. So I think sets a really good level of excitement. It has actually not only given a snapshot of where people's views are, how they might have changed during COVID, but I think the exercise of doing it has also re-energized some to be engaged again. They see an opportunity for input. Just a point that came up often, and I think is one worth noting, certainly here at the board, is a lot of our discussion today has been about the resource and capacity that we have. And an interesting question, and it's the first time in a long time that I've had it from communities, is what can we do to create wealth, to create taxes going to our services, to create more resource, more capacity, create more resilience for and between ourselves. And I found it very reassuring that, again, a conversation that usually takes the shape of, this is important to me and my community, became, okay, I'll give you feedback on that, but how do we make more? How do we get beyond this resource requirement? Is it asking Scottish Government, UK Government? Is it about getting cash into the pockets of those with the least income? Is it about business? Is it about, it's all of that. But I thought was interesting, although it wasn't quite one of the questions there, there was a real appetite for that in communities, which I think will serve us well going ahead. But well done and thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Jonathan. I think that'll be helpful for others to hear, you know, what that feedback has that you've heard directly from communities and how we can build on that moving forward. I'll bring in Luann now because she's had her hand up.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, Michelle. Really impressive to see that level of engagement. That's really great. And I'm pleased that you picked up the interrelated bit, because I was concerned that we're going to chop off these lower down ones, which wouldn't be the right approach. You said that there was some gaps or some new areas were identified. I don't know if you're able to say much yet on, are there likely to be completely new areas that are going to be brought into the LOIP as a result of this? And my second question is, I wondered what engagement there's been with staff who have been around the charters in terms of the LOIP refresh, you know, because obviously the board members have been asked and we're asking the public. So is there a similar consultation being done with staff around who are working in along the charters? That's my two questions.
Okay, thanks for that, Luann. Michelle, are you best placed for those, or?
Yep, in terms of the gaps, you will see that they have been summarised on page 38. So you'll get a sense as you go through them. I'm not sure they're all necessarily gaps. They will, I think, feature in quite a number of our charters already. So some of our change ideas would link to some of these suggestions. So that's the process that the outcome improvement groups and indeed our locality empowerment groups are going through at the moment, considering the results of the simulator, considering it against the priorities, and to make an assessment of whether there is some genuine gaps there or where they are actually going to feature in some of the improvement projects. So I don't think there's anything hugely missing, but certainly as we take forward the LOIP, we'll reflect again on these gaps and make an assessment of whether we think there are still anything that isn't featuring the LOIP and why. So that's in terms of the gaps. In terms of colleagues that were involved in developing the charters, there's been a few ways of how they've been able to feed into the process. And they're part of an engaged improvement community within Community Plan in Aberdeen. So certainly around the outcome improvement groups, they are being able to feed in their thoughts and their views about how we reflect on the simulator results and also their experiences of taking forward the improvement projects so far. So that's all very much part and parcel of the development process we're going through on the LOIP, but we also held a number of sessions targeted specifically at frontline staff just to make sure that we were getting their direct view. So they were able to either do that through a kind of version of the simulator that was targeted at them or through the focus group. So we've tried to kind of cover all areas, certainly recognising that they've got a lot to offer.
Okay, thanks for Michelle. I think that's helpful. Happy with that, Luann? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on this paper? Not seeing any hands up. The recommendations were on page 30 of the papers. We were looking to note obviously the information and things that had come back. We were also looking for partners to agree to take the summary results and dashboard into our own organisations to consider the key findings alongside our own strategic plans. So very much in the theme of discussions that we've had around that partnership working and how we become more aligned with both our own single systems and also the partnership as a whole. And we're also agreeing that once the refresh of the LOIP and the locality plans have been approved, that opportunities for citizens to participate in the partnership's improvement activity, both citywide and at a local level, will be promoted. And I think that's the important part. And it's clear from Jonathan's comments there that the communities really do want to get involved. They see that they have a huge part to play in the community planning process. And I think we should all be trying to do as much as we can to encourage that. So if everybody's happy with those recommendations, we can perhaps agree them and move on to our next item. Yeah, I'm not seeing any dissension from that. So thank you for that. OK, that then takes us on to 3.1, which is our improvement programme dashboard. We get the quarterly update and a couple of appendices there, one with the overview of progress and Appendix 2, which details some new charters that are there. Do we have any questions on this item? Not seeing any hands up. No, we're content with what we had in the papers there. I take it, Michelle, you didn't want to add anything to this? You're
no, but Alison might.
Alison. Oh, yes, Alison, you've come on.
Sorry,
to the screen. Was there anything you wanted to add, Alison, or just happy to answer questions if anybody had any? Yeah,
just happy to answer questions. And just, I guess, in terms of the overview, at this time we've got the 72 live projects, of which we've got the 2 project ends to come later in the agenda, and the overview of the progress of those 72 live projects is just at Appendix 1, but also with the project updates and the data available on the improvement project dashboard. And it was just to highlight that, obviously, in terms of the LOIP refresh, each of the outcome improvement groups are reviewing their respective stretch outcomes and improvement aims. And therefore, as a result, the remaining 20 improvement aims that we still require a charter for are being reviewed as part of that process. And therefore, we've marked them in the report as pending the LOIP refresh.
OK, perfect. Yeah, I mean, I think we've had discussions before about it made sense to us that we, we postponed decisions on those charters until we have the refresh in place. So that made a lot of sense, I think, to the board. So we're content with that. Okay, so what you were looking for on this was we were obviously noting the overview that was there, approving the 2 new charters that are included, and just noting that the outstanding charters will be postponed, and we'll look at them again, and consider the progress and update provided on the live improvement projects, which people can obviously access via that improvement project dashboard and drill into some further details. So on that basis, I think the board is happy to approve those recommendations and move on. So thank you for that. Right, that then takes us to 3.2, which is the first of the projects that is looking to come to a conclusion. And it was increase the number of distress brief intervention opportunities for people presenting at frontline services in distress by 10% by 2021. The information is obviously before us there. Are there any questions on this? I think, again, Alison is going to help us out if there are any questions, because I think those presenting the papers weren't able to attend today. So Alison is ably armed with answers should anybody have any questions. I'm not seeing any hands. Yes, Luann, did you want to come in on that one?
Yes, thank you. So on the distress brief interventions, really good report and it looks really positive. I just wondered what the degree of follow-up is with people who've experienced the distress brief intervention to see if there's been a sustained improvement in their situation, because I suppose that's what we're interested in, that actually that's led to them connecting with services and getting them to a better place. I'd be interested just to hear a bit about that. Thank you.
I noticed a wry smile from Alison there, and I'm not sure if that means it's maybe a question she's not got the information for. But I'll maybe bring Alison in first. But I mean, it's a good question, Luann, because as you say, it's about that follow-up action and that onward improvement. You want to make sure that that is being sustained. Alison, do you have any information on that, or could we perhaps provide that to the board separately?
I don't have the answer, and I'm not going to guess it, but we'll be able to find out from the project lead, and we'll be able to get that out to you.
Okay, fine. Thank you for that. Apologies, Luann, that we haven't been able to provide that today. Normally we would have the authors with us, but I think circumstances have just meant they were unable to come today. But if you're content with that, we can perhaps send that out under separate cover. Not seeing.
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Thanks. Not seeing any other hands there. So if people are content we're being asked to agree that that project should now come to an end. I know we've had discussions, particularly at recent board meetings, about trying to make sure that projects would come to a conclusion, because the whole point of the improvement methodology is that they don't run on for forevermore. And we've, I think that's been taken on board by improvement groups. We are seeing some more coming forward, which is good to see, particularly when we're seeing that there have been improvements made as a result of the work that's been undertaken. So not seeing any dissension from that, so I think we're happy to proceed. The next one is, this is the increase to 30% of the number of individuals who are involved in cuckooing incidents. And again, the report is before us. Jonathan, I think you've got your hand up, so I'll bring you in first.
Yes, thank you. It was just, again, some of the projects here that we're seeing coming to their close, that some of the risk indicators suggest in order for this to become embedded and mainstream and permanent, there will be a resource implication that perhaps can't currently be fully met. It was just to make sure if we have follow-up actions from that, for example, going to our funding tracker, that when we make the case for what the needs are for Aberdeen, what we've collectively identified, that what we're seeing from these projects can help inform the ask that we're making to support sources elsewhere.
Thanks for that, Jonathan. Alison, did you want come in on that. I mean, I think it's a really important point, because it's what, you know, the discussions that we've had previously about that pooling of resource, and I suppose having an evidence base to show that that's where the resource should be channeled. You know, that's the point of the improvement projects, is to demonstrate that the action that you're taking is having a difference, or making a difference, I should say. And, you know, we're seeing that improvement. But do you have any further information on that, Alison, or again, would it be? Oh, Alison, I think you're still on mute.
I was just going to add that in terms of the resourcing of the actual improvement projects, we've recently added the resources section to the improvement project charter template, so that we're able to capture exactly the resources required to implement that the change ideas that they have. But I guess then the next stage is what you're looking for, is once we've got them, how do we embed them in? And that will be taken forward by the project teams when they introduce them as business as usual, if that's the appropriate thing to do so.
Okay, thank you for that. You happy with that, Jonathan?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. I think, as I say, just that we're now getting to that first suite of projects on the whole coming to an end, to make sure we have that embedded on how we go ahead. But that's good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So are we happy, not seeing any other people indicating that they want to come in, are we happy to agree the recommendations on that one at page 99? Yeah. We're agreeing that the testing is concluded and we move on. Okay, thank you. Right, that then takes us to item 4.1, which is the Aberdeen City Local Fire Plan 2020. And I think Bruce Fackerson, who's the area commander, is still with us, I'm hoping. Yes, I see Bruce there. Bruce, do you want to maybe just introduce the paper or give a flavour of the content of it, and then we can maybe open. I know it's here for us noting, but maybe you're happy to take questions if anybody has any after that.
Absolutely, Chair. I'll just give a quick overview and take any questions that are presented. So this is our 3-year plan that we're required to produce for the Community Planning Partnership to consider. It very much falls underneath the government's outcome improvements, but also we take our Scottish Fire and Rescue Service strategic plan and the local outcome improvement plan, and from both of those distill our local fire and rescue plan for Aberdeen City. So it is very specific to the needs of the city, whilst also delivering the strategic intention of the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. We recognise that the current LOIP is going to go through a refresh, and we will absolutely review our local plan at that stage. And unfortunately, trying to choreograph timelines between my service, Aberdeen City Council, and the work that's required to produce the local plan hasn't quite worked this time, and may not ever work, to be fair, but we will endeavour to make sure the plan is up to date and refreshed when appropriate. So the plan sets out our 5 identified priorities and how we will measure performance against those. And we take our performance to the Public Protection Committee, which actually met this morning, and I'm held to account in a public forum at that opportunity. So our 5 priorities are that we will seek to improve fire safety in the home, reduce deliberate fires, improve fire safety in the business community, reduce unwanted fire alarm signals, and provide effective risk management and operational preparedness. And I'll probably pause there, Chair, and take any questions that anybody might have.
Thanks very much, Bruce, for that brief overview. And yes, the timing aspect is always an issue, isn't it, when you're trying to get every aspect of the different organisations lined up. But obviously, you know, pleasing to hear that with the refresh happening, that, you know, once that comes on stream, that you will look at it as we will ourselves with our strategic plan, to make sure that they remain aligned to that. So that's pleasing to hear, obviously. Any questions or queries for Bruce? No, not seeing anybody's hands raised. Hopefully it was as easy as that at Public Protections as well, Bruce, but maybe there's a bit more questioning around that, I'm not sure.
Comment.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. On that basis, as I say, it was here for us to note. So appreciations to Bruce for submitting that and allowing us to see just the work that his service is planning to do moving forward around that priority areas. Okay, right. Thank you, Bruce. Okay, that then takes us on to 4.2, which is the community planning budget for 2021-22. So Michelle, I think you're with us to answer if there are any queries or questions on this. Anything further to add to the paper, Michelle, or just happy to take questions? Yeah, nodding heads there. Any questions on what we've got before us? Goodness, I think we've all been we've obviously exerted ourselves at the development session before the board meeting today, so I don't think there is anything else. Okay, the recommendations are on page 123, which is, you know, obviously we've been asked to agree the budget as it's proposed, agree the spending commitments, note the grant funding that we've secured to date in relation to the community planning work, and we're being asked to agree that the Community Justice Transition Fund is used to fund the continuation of the fixed term Community Justice Officer post for 21-22, which would seem a sensible approach and something that we've done previously around that grant funding. So not seeing any hands or dissent from that, so I take it that we can agree those recommendations as they appear in the report. So thank you for that. And that takes us swiftly on to just the last item we have, which is to confirm the date of the next meeting. As you're aware, we're due to meet on the 7th of July. And at that point, we will be considering all the information that's come forward in relation to the refresh of the LOIP. So I'm hoping that we can get as many board members to that meeting as possible to have the suitable discussions around the refresh. So it just, in conclusion, just thank you all for your attendance today and look forward to seeing you in July. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, folks.
Thanks.